We will be discussing the system, the system software, the application, and the user interface. You have been doing this till middle school, but obviously things will be coming a bit more. Okay, so as far as P1 is concerned, you will find that the material in P1 is not very tough, frankly speaking. The important thing will be how we are supposed to answer. Because since you're in A level, the examiner would like you to add more keywords, more professional way to answer, and this is where we have to concentrate more, how to answer actually. Okay. Now, operating system OS, actually, how do we define it? It's an interface. It's an interface that is between the user and the hardware. For example, if you buy a new laptop, you want to use the laptop and you don't have an operating system, you can't use it. The only way you can use the hardware, the hard drive, or save the data in the pen drive will be if you have an OS. So like I defined, an OS is an interface between the user and the hardware. It helps the user to interact with the hardware. So your operating system will also help you to interact with the application software. Okay. And in this way, the application software can interact with the hardware as well. So it's a middleware. You can say an operating system is also middleware between the hardware and the application softwares. There are multiple functions of the operating system that you should be aware of, starting from the allocation of memory to the software and general allocation of memory within the system as well. It will help in sending instructions to the output devices, when to send a printout, when to turn on the camera, so on and so. Okay. It will communicate with the input devices as well. It will help you to transfer files from here and there. It will help you to make sure proper processing time is allocated to every application that is opened up. For example, if you're working with your Photoshop and other softwares at the same time, your operating system will help with the process management and the task management. It's all the operating system do it. Obviously, it's doing it while it's coordinating with the hardware, such as the processor, okay, through the motherboard. So the software and hardware, they work together, but right now our emphasis is mainly on operating system. So I'll stick to that. I'll not involve the hardware over here right now because I don't want you to mention those points when the question of operating system comes. Sending error messages or status messages to the application, dealing with user logins. So these are just generally think of the general properties of Windows 10. You would come across these. So these are the properties of your operating system. Device drivers. For example, you buy a new camera, you get a CD with it, and you have to install that camera in order to use it. So you have to have a device driver. The device driver obviously is installed between the operating system and the hardware. Okay, that's why we use the device drivers. So obviously, there's a new hardware that you just got, and then you want to use it. The only way you can use it is if it interacts with the operating system, the OS. But generally speaking, not mentioned over here, mostly you might have seen now we have plug and play. We don't have to install most of the device drivers. This used to happen in the previous Windows because now in Windows 10 and frankly even in Windows 7, most of the device drivers are already added. So the prominent manufacturers of this hardware, they coordinate with Microsoft and Apple so that within the operating system that these drivers are added. Feasibility of the user don't have to install it again. So you'll not find any CDs, DVDs now coming with all these new hardware that you buy. They're plug and play. Okay, but as far as the device driver is concerned, I just told you, it's obviously there so that the device can communicate with the hardware. There has to be its own device drivers. Utility softwares are those softwares that do not directly uh, are used by the user, but are used by the operating system. So utility softwares are used by the operating system so that the operating system can function properly. Now, what do I mean? What I mean is that you know antivirus programs, you know district fragmenting programs, you know there are lots of other programs. These programs are used to provide additional functionality to the operating system so that it can perform properly. An antivirus program helps the operating system, not the user. This defragmenting program helps the operating system to work properly. So we'll discuss different kinds of utility programs today, okay, which are part, as I mean, which are part of the operating system, okay, right. So what we have over here is compilers. Now there are two kinds. There are compilers and interpreters. Both your compilers and interpreters will be doing something. They will be converting your program file to your machine code, the object file. Okay, the object file. So as far as a compiler is concerned, it will do this in one go. In one go, it will compile all of the code in one go. Translates it, reads everything, translates it to the object code. An interpreter, on the other hand, will translate the program file, the source file, into the object file, the high-level language, into the low-level language in the sense, because the low-level language can be understood by the CPU, the zeros and one, the machine code, and the high-level language that you have is understood by the humans. So humans work in Python, they work in JavaScript. Humans can't work in machine language. Well, in between, you also have an assembly language. Okay, not discussing right now, but there is. So as I was saying, your interpreter will do it module by module or line by line. So it will go through every module, every line, and then it will see and it will convert, see, convert, see, convert. If there happens to be an error, it would let the user know that there's an error. Please, you need to rectify it. Such as the way we were doing in JavaScript, you remember? They were giving us line number this has an error, line number this has an error. So you programs such as Python, such as Java, okay, Ruby on Rails, these languages all nowadays are using interpreters. You have still languages that can use compilers, such as C language, such as C++. These basically do is, they use is a compiler. The advantage of interpreter or compiler is that in interpreter, you will be able to handle every error that comes in. And right away, you will be able to rectify it, not till the end. In case of an interpreter, in case of a compiler, the entire code is generated till the end, and you will get a bunch of lines of errors at the end that you need to rectify. The interpreter tends to be a slower process because line by line you have to rectify it, but generally it's a better way. But compiler that does it in one go. As I was saying yesterday, I will share my notes with you for this particular part, in which I have mentioned in points, and it will be easy for you to remember all this. So like I said, your interpreters, they work line by line, okay? That's what they do. The further discussion is about linkers. You know, or maybe you don't know, that there are dynamic link libraries. You might have encountered sometimes that maybe you've installed the software and the software gives you a .dll library error, that a DLL file is missing. Maybe or maybe not, you have experienced it. So because the DLL files are those files that are external library for any program. Now, why do we have libraries? We have built-in methods. For example, in Dreamweaver, when I was writing document.write, So dot write, dot get element by ID, all these methods that were just dropping down and we were getting all of them. The programmer does not have to remember all of them. There will be no errors. All these methods are saved somewhere in the library. So all these methods, properties are saved in the library for the reusability by the programmer. There's a lot of advantage to it. First of all, time saving, efficiency, and there will be no errors or bugs because we did not spell anything properly. So the most commonly methods, functions, properties are grouped together in a file, and this file is known as your runtime library. This is also known as a dynamic link library as a .dll. If I will show you right now, if you can see my screen, obviously you can. If you come to C drive, if you come to Windows, in Windows you will find System32. Within System32, you will find DLL files for every software that you're using. These are your dynamic link library files. So these programs, even though they are not programming softwares, but they have their own DLL files that they will constantly be referring to perform different functions. And so this is what DLL files are. Why are we discussing it? I'll tell you why. So we were discussing about the source code. We were discussing about the object code. And a compiler basically converts a source code into an object code, fine. But then you have a linker. The linker will add all these object codes before they are converted into an exe file, an executable file. They will join the runtime library with it. Okay, so the runtime library will be linked along with the object file into the executable program. And you might have seen whenever you install any software, you always get the .exe file, .exe. So whenever you install Photoshop, you get Photoshop.exe or any software. This is what the .exe file stands for. Are you clear on this, all of you? Any question?
No, sir.
Very good. If you further start discussing the application softwares, again, a very general thing, but again, I have to discuss everything because maybe some of the students have not done this before. All the software that can perform general application for the users come under this category. The word processors they are used for, just try to remember the properties of these. From writing letters, from producing report, producing coursework, creating menu, mail merge, writing a book, these all are your word processing documents. Okay? And the features you should again have in mind from tables, headers, footers, sections, formatting, adding styles, spell check. These are again the features of word processor. So just think of MS Word if the question comes and list down the most important features that you have in word processor. So you could get a general example is give reasons for the use of word processor software for creating a menu for a restaurant. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we would mention that what properties are there in MS Word that can help us to create a menu, which means obviously MS Word can help us to do the spell check. It can help us to format the text font. It can help us to create tables. Okay, it can be used for anything. It can be used for automatic numbering. Styles could be added. So we will just talk about why word processor would be feasible to be used to create a menu system. If the same question would have changed from give reasons to evaluate, if the examiner would have mentioned evaluation, that would have been, evaluation would have been different. In case of evaluation, I would have not only mentioned these points. In evaluation, I would have even talked about that why word processor will not be relevant software to design or to create the menu, I would obviously talk about the graphical properties of MS Word, and I would say it's not a graphical software. It's not meant to make illustrations or work with bitmaps. For that, one should be using graphic software, because if images are involved and if more advanced manipulation of images rather than just brightness and the contrast and resizing the images is concerned, I would obviously prefer using a graphical software for this instead of MS Word. But my evaluation, I would come up with a conclusion and end up by saying, no doubt MS Word would be very much feasible to create a menu system. So did you get my point? If the question changes, okay, your answer changes accordingly. That's the most important thing. And this is where we start losing our marks, because we don't read the question carefully. I will be doing all this when we do the past paper, so don't worry about that. You're with me, all of you? Iman, can you hear me better?
Yes, sir.
Right, good. Okay, so we will discuss all this all over again. Spreadsheets, okay, we will be doing after Illustrator, inshallah. Illustrator ke baad, we will be doing Spreadsheet Excel. Many of you have done, but obviously A-levels mein spreadsheet is much more advanced, and it's one of the software that is going to help you in every field. तो ये तो हम बस सारे मॉड्यूल तो हम बहुत से करेंगे, मगर इसको मैं काफी एक्सटेंसिवली कराऊंगा. Spreadsheet, programming, वैसे frankly speaking, every software जो A-level IT में, they are very important, and you will realize inshallah by the time you go to university and your practical life, oh हमने कितना अच्छा किया था, हमने A-level IT रखी. I am telling you, you will realize it afterwards. Okay. So spreadsheets are also known as your mathematical models. They are used for calculations. They are used for statistical analysis. They are used for modeling. Now, why do I call spreadsheet modeling software? The reason why we call spreadsheets a modeling software is because if you change a value in a cell in one cell, and if you have use this cell in reference to another cell, and you have applied a function formula, okay, for example, VLOOKUP or something, the values will be, by changing the value here, the values will change here as well. So this is just a simple situation. You might have a lot of nested functions, and from different spreadsheets, you have done external referencing, and you have used other complex scenarios as well. You have created is a spreadsheet model. The model basically predicts you what will happen if you change something. So if you change one of the value, you can see how it, so if you can calculate the profit by changing the expenses and all that, so you can predict. So spreadsheets are considered as a mathematical model because they can help you to show the outcome while you change the inputs, the variables, okay, to an extent you may want to. Database management softwares, DBMS softwares such as MS Access can be used to create reports, to create data entry forms, okay, to search specific records. So obviously, in order to manage the database, we have this software. So database management. How do you manage data? You have a lot of data, but you have to manage it. For that, we use database management softwares. So we will be doing MS Access to a lot of extent in A-levels, a lot of extent, okay? And it's very interesting. So when you come towards the field such as known as data scientist, you will be working with these softwares to a lot of extent. Graphic manipulation softwares will include your photo editing softwares and your photo editing softwares, and at the same time you will have your vector-based softwares. So whether you're working with photo or vector-based, you'll just need to mention the properties. And Illustrator, a vector-based software, will be dealing with shapes mostly and with text. and with the gradients and all that, and objects. A photo editing software will be dealing mostly with photos. That's the major difference. And obviously, your vector-based software creates these lines and shapes using mathematical calculations, and photos are created using your pixels. Video editing softwares will be used, which is also in our syllabus. Okay, video editing softwares will do is they will obviously import video. You can edit video, you can add sections, you can edit the audio, you can enter some text, rotate. All these properties are the video editing software which you should know about. You should have a list of all of them. But even if photo editing softwares and your video editing softwares, both of them, they take a lot of time and they consume a lot of RAM. Okay, you need to encode, like we discussed in the encoding as well. Final video has to be encoded into a format that is acceptable by all other computers that will be playing it. Communication software such as the Zoom right now we are using, video conferencing softwares, okay, voice over internet protocol. These are all the software that can be used for communication. Okay, emails and all that. Okay, messages. They are all part of communication software. So you know about web authoring software. You've done that. Dreamweaver is a very good example. Dreamweaver can help you to create a website. In other words, you could explain that web authoring software can help you to create a content layer, a presentation layer, and a behavior layer. To preview website pages, common navigation bar, work with HTML, meta tagging, all these are just forms, validation, buttons. This is just few of them. There are lots of other things that you can mention. Okay. Control and measuring softwares will basically include what? Now, again, it's a very thorough discussion that is done later on, not over here. It's just the reason why they are discussed over here is because it's an application software. Otherwise, monitoring and control is a full chapter in chapter 3. We'll discuss in detail. So we'll just talk about that monitoring and control system. Just you take the data from the environment using the sensors, and there are different variables such as pressure, moisture, temperature, wind speed, distance, PS, that are different variables that can be used to take an input with the help of sensors. Control systems, we will discuss inshallah in detail how we can control lights, motor, speakers, and all that. Apps are basically applications that are mostly a word that has been generated for phones and for tablet computers. For PC, we usually use the word application softwares, but apps are developed for phones. That's the only difference. So there are lots of apps I think you know about. Applets are basically an extended word that is used, such as you have Java applets. They are like for a stock exchange website you would like to create is an applet, a graph that is automatically updated. So a particular part in a website that is doing a particular task is known as an applet. This is what an applet basically is. It could be a software, but generally the word applet refers to websites. Websites property, a piece of software, a piece of program, and that is doing its own particular job. Evaluation software is at given time. Yeah, it's very simple again thing that evaluate and discuss the use of spreadsheet software for deciding what the best tariff is for a customer to use the mobile phone. Okay. So yeah, the discussion basically is that obviously a spreadsheet software can be used for a thorough analysis. A full scenario can be created, and when once data is entered, we could generate even a graph and we could analyze it properly. So again, okay, how we can, since the question is all about evaluation, okay, so we will talk about graphs, we'll talk about the function formulas as far as spreadsheets are concerned, okay, right? And there isn't much disadvantage according to the scenario. So that's it what we mentioned. So as far as applicant software's evaluation questions are concerned, you just need to think about what are the properties of application softwares. Okay. Then we have this discussion coming up. It's of different types of user interface. We are right now using a graphical user interface. Okay. This Windows 10 is a GUI. Initially you had was CLI, command line interface. You will have it right now. You can go into DOS right now. Okay. You can go into, if you write CMD, you can go into command prompt right now. And that's your command prompt. Okay. You can write two different things like I config, which tells you the property of your internet right now. Okay, from where am I getting the internet? What's the IP address and all that? Okay. The different commands that you can help to communicate with the hardware. But obviously, as far as the command line interface is concerned, you might one had to learn all the commands to do. You can copy files. You can do lots of things, but it was not feasible for everyone. This is why in 1995, when Windows introduced 1995 Windows, the PC became PC. The PC became PC when GUI came into existence. It was very easy for anyone to communicate with the hardware because you had windows. That's window. You had icons, you have menus, and I have a pointer right now. And using all that, I can do whatever I want to do. So a graphical user interface was the beginning of a personal computer, frankly speaking. It was because of this interface that was developed by Windows and Apple that we are using computers in such an easy way now. Otherwise, if CLI were there still to exist, not everyone would be a PC user, frankly speaking. Dialog interface, such as Google Translate, and Google has introduced it. So it's an interface that can simply listen to humans' voice and give their operations according to whatever we say. Dialog interface will be one of the most important interfaces and that is used in many other places, not only in your laptops. So if you talk about self-driven cars such as Tesla, you have a dialog interface. You just have to tell that where do I want to go. So you are getting many other vehicles and there are many other, I would say, devices in which dialog interface is being introduced. So your information is basically synthesized using voice, and your voice is converted into commands, and these commands are given respectively. So this is what, obviously there's a big disadvantage to it, okay, but there could be a lot of disadvantage to it as well. This disadvantage is times if it will not be able to understand, and if there is some other noise coming in, there will be problem. So obviously this still needs a lot of improvement. Like I just mentioned, just the noise, the background noise. Gesture-based recognition again is a very good way. So by gestures you can control the operating system. But again, not all the gestures can be used all the time. For example, while you're driving, you might use some other gesture and that could result in something else. Okay, so this will not be good, especially driving in Lahore. Okay, not only Lahore, many other countries where there's a lot of traffic problem, and let's say you are using gesture-based recognition. So you make a weird gesture. Okay, that will result in something else. So, like I said, gestures, it's a good way, but not all the time can be used. Okay, not all the time. So then we're developing over here is we're talking about is that whenever we make is a form, okay, we have to think of while we design the form, we have to think of the color. That the form that we make has what type of colors, the background color, the text color. We have to look at the audience for which we are making that form or any application that it has a form. So we need to talk about house style. Corporate house style basically means that every corporate has its own color scheme. Emirates, they have their own color scheme. There's a lot of advantage of corporate house style. The basic advantage of corporate house style is that whenever you look at a particular font, you can tell that it belongs to Emirates or Pepsi. So one particular color scheme like LGS has blue and yellow, blue and white. So every organization, they have their own corporate house style for the unique identification to have a unique existence in the market. So these corporate house styles, where do you see them? You see these corporate house styles in letterheads of the organization, in the memos, on the websites. You will also see them on billboards, visiting cards. So all those publications, whether they're online, whether they're offline, they have to follow corporate house style for that organization. This is why you have designers who basically do this, theme designers. Okay, for example, they actually work on this, and it's something of utmost importance right now, because if you have to create your own unique existence in the market, you have to follow the corporate house style rule, so that people know, we are dealing with this company. That's it. So that's what colors actually talk about. Layout. Whenever you have to design something, you have to talk about the layout, which means, let's say if you're working with a form, you have to take care of the fact that your text boxes are placed separately, not very near. They don't actually are coming on top of each other. And the placement of the buttons, the forms, the objects, each and every object that you have, whether it's calendar, whether it's heading, all the related objects which will be there, these objects should have a proper layout, a professional layout, so that it looks professional. Font sizes, obviously same thing. Font sizes should be readable, proper color scheme, proper size for every age, whoever wants to use it. Control, mental model. The discussion of mental model over here means that, I'll just summarize it, that mental model means that whenever you have, why are we discussing mental model while we are discussing creating forms? Okay, that's form. Well, let's say I was supposed to create is a form. This is a very pathetically designed form. So if I ask you, you know what, you have to make a form for a website for a university or college that takes the details of every student who wants to join in, who wants to register. You will first of all, for some time, before you start doing something, before you start doing your analysis and your research, you will do is, you will create a mental model. The mental model basically means thinking about what needs to be done. So depending upon different experiences by individual person, create their own mental model based on assumptions and obviously their experience. And using all that, they will create one. This is one of the feature that you'll find in professional software engineers. Inshallah, you'll also become one of them if you want to pursue that career. You need to have is very good mental model. Okay, thinking analysis. You should be able to create model really fast. That's something really important for the system analyst. So, I'm sorry, did I skip quality of information? Yeah, obviously quality of information means the information that you're providing, does it not have any mistakes and all that? Is it good quality? Okay. So there should not be any mistakes. So if you talk about the general things, for example, you have the following objects. So poorly designed forms, you can see not laid properly. So it's obviously very poorly designed. Overlapping objects, and font sizes are different as well. Color scheme, buttons not properly placed. I mean, I don't think this is the worst example of a badly designed form, obviously. But that's what you have to tell the examiner. This is how a badly designed form looks like. Yeah, this explain all these things, that what is where and all that. Utility softwares, like I told you, utility softwares do what? Utility softwares, are all of you with me, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, right. I'm sorry, Theory, please don't start sleeping. I mean, I did not even ask you to turn on the cameras, although officially the admin has told us. And I'll assume all of you, you have turned on. मेरी तरफ से क्या लो you have, okay? Because frankly speaking, I trust you. The only reason the admin does ask us that you have to turn on the camera is so that we know the students are there or not. But I believe all of you right now with me, I trust you on that. Is it fine now? I can trust you.
Yes, sir.
मैं इसलिए कहा नहीं आप लोगों को, मगर obviously we do that, okay? So even if the admin does ask you, आप कहते हैं हाँ से साइन भी ऑन कराते हैं, मगर if I ask you to on, मुझे स्क्रीन में नजर क्या आएगा और उससे बैंडविड्थ कम हो जाती है. That is the reason why technically I don't. मगर मैं आपसे ऑन करा रहा हूँ, ठीक है ना? बिल्कुल ठीक है. तो yeah, trust is something really important, okay? So मेरे ख्याल से स्टूडेंट और टीचर का ट्रस्ट इतना होना चाहिए कि if I say you do something, you should do it. तो मुझे क्यों बार बार रिक्वेस्ट करनी पड़े, ऐसा होए क्यों? That's not a good thing. I trust you, you trust me. Anyway, all of you with me, right? Iman, आपको आवाज आ रही? बार बार ज्वाइन अप कर रही थी. Laiba, Fatima, all of you there? Alina?
Yes, sir.
Right,
Yes,
right.
sir.
Okay, good beta. I'm sorry, theory ऐसा ही होता है. I know. If I was in your place, क्या सर बोली जा रहे हैं. But I'm sorry, we have to obey the time. मैं प्रैक्टिकल से नहीं करा सकता ना, थ्योरी भी डिस्कस करनी थी. But anyway, so the role of different utility softwares, we have the antivirus program. An antivirus program basically does is that it helps the operating system to work properly. It will get rid of viruses, the malwares. So it will keep on detecting everything. It will make sure if the virus comes in, it will help it to delete it, to quarantine it, and so on and so. Okay, worms, viruses, spywares, all these will be dealt with using antivirus program. You also have utility programs such as backup. It takes a regular backup. You also have it in Word. Sorry, I'm not saying Word. You also have it in. You know what? The good thing is, हमारा टाइम एंड नहीं हुआ है 40 minutes बाद. ये तो अजीब सी बात है. Anyway. Because we started at 8 o'clock से पहले. So anyway, so backup is part of it, right? So you can take backups. You have restore point भी होता है Windows में. Disk data compression. You can compress your data. Right click, send to. It's utility software. It helps to archive all your folders, put them in one place, and to compress them to reduce the size. Disk defragmentation क्या होता है? I'll just explain. मैं आपको एक्सप्लेन करता हूँ नॉट सो दिस यू कैन रीड दिस एज वेल, मगर मैं आपको प्रॉपर तरीके से एक्सप्लेन करता हूँ. Disk defragmentation basically does is that at some place, yeah, I can use this. For example, this is your disk, and I'm not talking about HDD, I'm talking about this one. So what happens is when you're writing data, sometimes you track data is written here, sometimes it's written here, sometimes it's written here, here. So data आपका different जगहों पे save हो रहा है. Over a period of time, your data is scattered everywhere. क्यों? Because we call it the random. We call it random data. Okay? So randomly it's placed here and there. बिल्कुल ठीक है. And what happens is, this is your liver. आपका एक liver होता है. And there is a head over here. ये जो head होता है ना, ये head. This head goes this way and goes this way. ये कभी इधर आएगा, कभी इधर आएगा to read the tracks. So this goes here and there. So if your tracks are in a disorganized manner, sometimes it has to go. They read this, फिर उसका एक part यहाँ से, फिर उसका part यहाँ से. No, this is taking a lot of time. The fetch execute time will be reduced because the head has to move here and there to fetch different parts from the disk. Disk defragmentation is a process. जिससे होता क्या है कि over a period of time, what will happen is over a period of time कि ये आपके disk है, your tracks which are related to the files with the same file will be placed in an order. एक order में आ जाएंगे, दूसरे एक order में, तीसरे एक order में, फिर एक order में, फिर एक order में. So they will come in your tracks. Now the advantage to this will be that again your head is over here and it stays here and it can read all the data from here. So have you not reduced the fetch execute cycle because the head does not have to go here and there on this lever and fetches the data from one track? This is known as disk defragmenting, to basically arrange your data on the tracks in an organized manner. The process known as disk defragmentation. You can also find defragmentation in Windows. Optimize drives. I want to defragment my drive. So if I say I want to optimize my C drive, I can say optimize. And if I now click on optimize, it will start defragmenting it, but I don't want to do it right now. Because if I start doing it right now, obviously the computer gets slow, I don't want to do it. But once you do it, and in 6 months, because your computer becomes faster after this, it does become. It takes hours, it takes like 3 to 4 hours depending upon your computer's processing power. उसके मुताबिक वो करेगा. Right? Okay, then you have is formatting. You can format a hard drive. It's utility software formatting. Like आपके पास you know, you can right click and you can format a pen drive or a disk. It's utility software. File copying. You want to automatically copy files. The utility software that can help you do so. So deleting. ये सारे utility softwares में आते हैं. Let me learn. Okay. So these are all part of utility programs. Custom built software versus off-the-shelf softwares. Custom built softwares are those that you create for yourself, for your organization. A custom built software tends to be more expensive because you have to spend time creating it. You have to pay the programmers. A custom built software tends to be a much more safer because the username, the password, okay, and since the executable file of this software is not available in the market, you can download from somewhere. Why do we get hackers? Why do we crack softwares? How come we have cracked versions or pirated softwares? Because once we provide the .exe file to everyone, and if a cracker or a hacker gets it, they will be able to get an access to it, and they'll provide us with serial numbers. Although in other sense, I don't want to talk about it, but they're helping many people. But it's illegal, it's not allowed. Anyway, that's another discussion that we'll be doing in ethics and all that. So, so your custom-built softwares tend to be much more safer because the exe file is not available to everyone. It's just with the person who is getting it developed. A custom-built software will not have a good customer service. It will not, as compared to off-the-shelf. Off-the-shelf means being developed by a very prominent company. They have a full 24/7 customer service. They also get updates. They have good help menu and all that, so on and so. So customer software are obviously good because they fulfill your requirements, but they don't tend to be as safe as your off-the-shelf softwares can be cracked easily, and they are not as safe as your custom-built software. A good comparison over here between custom-built softwares and off-the-shelf softwares. So off-the-shelf softwares, any software such as an accounting software that has been developed or being used by Microsoft Accounts software, which is developed by prominent organizations, and custom that you do it yourself. Okay, and software houses, they work because they make custom-built softwares for the clients, and obviously custom-built softwares are very common because every client, they want their own type of website. They don't want a website developed in Wix. That's it. No, they don't want that. They want their own inventory control software the way they want it. So when companies want their requirements, they pursue for custom-built software. When they want something which is generic, they can go for the off-the-shelf software. But that's not always the case, right? So you can just go through all this and please, before the next lecture, whatever I'm discussing, and you will go through all those topics yourself. Right, okay. Compilers and interpreters, again, there is an example, okay? But it's summary, like a way. Translate code into object code at once, line by line. Compiled object code will only work on operating system that has been. Source code can be translated into object code for more than one operating system. Yeah, that's a property that compiler will convert it and will only be used for the operating system for which it has been created for. But as far as interpreter, it will work for more than one operating system. It's more universal, you can say. So the interpreted code that has been generated through the interpreter is more universal. Object code is ready for executed without delay. Object code has to be generated, so additional time is needed to the execution time. Yes, compiling can take long time. Only the required code needs to be interpreted. So if you just want a particular code to be interpreted, you can do that. But in this case, you have to translate the entire thing. So this will obviously take more time for that. Right. So good. We're done with chapter 2. You can somehow have a look at the questions, but I would frankly suggest, okay, we have lots of past papers to do from. Yeah, we could also do from here as well, but all these questions have been taken from the past papers. So either you do these or either we do the past papers, the same thing. Then we have chapter monitoring and control system. Okay, you can tell me when to stop, all of you, because this is theory. It's not practical. In practical, obviously, we can discuss in 2 hours. 1 hour I teach and 1 hour you can practice. But theory, it's not the same case. It obviously can't be the same case. So आप लोग मुझे बता देना whenever you want me to stop. Okay. This is your chapter 3, monitoring and control. So monitoring and control में you have is input, process, and output. But in case of what is the difference between monitoring and control? Monitoring system, they take the data from the environment, such as your weather forecasting. You can set up different places in the weather forecasting equipment in Lahore. They take the data from the environment. the humidity, the temperature, the wind, and they save it in a database. So data is taken from the environment, it's saved in a database, okay, which can be used to plot a graph. So after, let's say, every half an hour, you take a reading and you plot it in database. You save it in database. At the end of the day, you'll have 48 readings and you can basically make a graph and see that how are the trends during the day. So monitoring systems, they take the input with the help of sensors and they save it in a database, remember that. In hospital, you can monitor a patient's blood pressure, it's monitoring. The oxygen level, it's monitoring. Okay. Our cameras monitor, they also monitor. Okay, they keep on saving it. A CCTV camera is monitoring. It's saving the video format and it's saving it in a hard drive. That's a database. That also comes in monitoring. Okay. So this is what they've explained over here. That's what monitoring actually is. But as far as your control system is concerned, control systems are different. Control systems, what they do is, they take the data from the environment, okay? I'm generally explaining all this because they explain all that. I'm explaining you in system code. Control systems will be taking the data from the environment, okay? You have a sensor that takes the data from the environment. It will give it to the processor, and then it will give the respective output to an actuator. Now, what's an actuator? An actuator is basically an output device that can perform some function. For example, a relay motor, a stepper motor. A relay motor is such as in a fan, a stepper motor in a drill machine. Stepper motor goes slowly but is more powerful. Then you have a solenoid. A solenoid is an electromagnet to close door, to lift objects, so on and so on. We have solenoids. We have buzzers. We have alarms. These all are your actuators, LED lights. So let's talk about air conditioning system. In air conditioning system, what will happen is, think over it. We take the data from the environment, the temperature, okay? Whatever temperature you have, your temperature sensor takes the input. Will take the temperature, the temp, from the environment, temperature. So constantly the sensor is taking the data from the environment, constantly. Then you have is a microprocessor, as a dedicated microprocessor, we call it. Okay, a dedicated processor. Okay, processor. So this dedicated processor will do one thing. This processor will be comparing the actual value that you have. It will compare it, double equal to comparison, with a preset value. Now, what do I mean by that? The actual value basically means that the actual value in the room right now, let's say it's 24 degrees Celsius. And, okay, the actual value is 24. But you want this to become is 20. So since the actual value is not equal to the preset value, this will tell the output device, which is the actuator, to keep on working. Okay, the output, the actuator. So the compressor, for example, is an actuator, it's an output device. The compressor will keep on working. I'm talking about air conditioning system. Okay, so the compressor will compress a liquid into gas, causing an exothermic and endothermic reactions happening. So when this happens, your heat is taken out and cold comes in, and so this keeps on happening. So the compressor keeps on working, okay, and the evaporator keeps on making it cool. So a time will come that this 20 becomes 20, the actual value in the room, since the compressor is on, since the evaporator and the condenser are working, okay, and throwing out the heat from the room. This becomes 20. When this becomes 20, the output device turns off, the compressor turns off. And this all is happening in a cycle because the sensor constantly is taking the data from the environment and it's giving to the processor, and the processor is doing this. The processor is comparing the actual value with the preset value. Did you get my point, this? All of you?
Yes, sir.
This comparison is very important because this can happen in every environment, in every place. We can talk about, let's say, a car security. In a car security, you have a sensor, you have a touch sensor, that when someone touches the car, the buzzer should be on. So the sensitivity of the touch sensor can be altered by the green box, which is below the steering. So if I make it really strong, if someone touches the car, the sensor will detect and it compare the sensitivity level compared to the actual with the preset, and will give the output in case of an alarm or lights. So it depends on how you change it. So your control systems can be in different way. We usually talk about greenhouse. Okay, the greenhouse is over here or not. No. So the entire discussion over here is all about that. Okay, so the greenhouse basically has both of them, monitoring system and control. Why do we have both in greenhouse? Because in greenhouse, I would like to monitor the pH level in soil, the humidity level of soil using sensors, the amount of heat, the temperature I would rather, so not heat, in the greenhouse. Okay, so the amount of what do you call it, the light coming in, I could use a light sensor. So if I'm just monitoring them, I'll use my monitoring system because if I'm just saving. But if I want to change the temperature, I would use as a control system because I would turn on the ventilators to cool it down. If I want to change the pH level, I could use sprinklers with specific chemicals to increase or decrease the pH level from acidic to alkaline. I could use windows to open and close for the light sensor. If you want the light to be remain this much, I could use light. So whenever you're controlling, it's simple control. Whenever you're saving, it's monitoring. And all these examples over here do the same thing. Okay, they've talked about car parking. The car will come, a motion sensor, an object detected, and if the size of the object, the volume of the object is greater than this, then this will open up. It doesn't mean if a cat is passing by, it will open. No, it depends on the object. So preset value compared to the actual value, true, open it up. And we also have RFIDs and all that. I'm talking about that. Well, that's a separate thing that if every car has an RFID, only then you open it. But I'm just talking about over here is the control. Pressure sensors. They've just talked about pressure sensors. Have a principle of piezoresistance, which means a change in the level, the pressure and the level of the sensor is detected, and that basically gives out the signals. In the vehicle industry, we're using lots of pressure sensors in the manufacturing, in the accelerator and the brake. We can use it in the nuclear plant, wherever we need to find out the pressure. Okay, chemical nuclear plants, aviation, marine industry. Okay, touch screens also use piezoresistance. Okay, to see how much pressure is being applied. So all these are the applications of your simple pressure sensor. Obviously, it's very important. Even you can have them in the road as pressure pads to see how many vehicles are there in traffic control. Okay, pressure pads also use pressure sensors. Okay, for example, you want to see how many vehicles are at any lane, you can use pressure sensor. So when a vehicle is over here, it will know through a pressure sensor that there's a vehicle. How would you know? One through the motion sensor. One you can know it through the distance sensor. But pressure sensors, they play a very vital role to basically know all this, right? Moisture and humidity, just talked about it in case of your, what do you call it? Greenhouse example, okay? Temperature sensors can be used in washing machines, they can be used in dryers, they can be used in refrigerators, Okay, let's give an example with light sensors can be used in street lights. Okay, light sensors can be used also in cars right now. Okay, then when it gets dark, the headlights turn on themselves. They can be used in digital camera to detect. Okay, these are the example of street light for your light sensors. Okay, so the overall discussion is about sensors. I will share again my own notes for this chapter as well. Okay, so there are lots of applications of these sensors. Not only this, there could be even more. Okay, for example, we could also discuss is in this case is which is not mentioned here, which you will find my notes. It's a very good discussion that how do we have a poultry farm which is not has any human intervention. So how can we use a monitoring and control system in a unmanned poultry farm? So but the reason why I've added that example is that please don't get limited to these examples. If you know what a control system does, what a monitoring system does, what are different kinds of sensors, what are different kinds of actuators, that's it. I think so you can create your own mental model and answer me. So tell me right now, I want all of you to be involved. In an unmanned poultry farm, how can control and monitoring systems can be used so that humans don't visit for a week and it can work on their own? Can someone help me out? Yes, anyone? You got my question or you did not get my question? Hmm?
Sir, question please repeat करते.
Question बेटा ये कि I'm trying to make a computerized poultry farm and I don't want let's say humans can't visit for a week. My system should be set up in such a way that using the control systems, I can feed the hens through the control system, and I would like to monitor as well. So, what type of different sensors, what type of processing, and what type of actuators can be used over here? What different variables should be controlled and monitored? One by one. Give me example one by one.
Temperature sensor.
Very good. So, a temperature sensor, explain it. What would you do with temperature sensor? And how would it reduce a human intervention? Because when we ask question, we should focus on the question. So temperature sensor will help us in reducing the human intervention in this way that we don't have to turn on the exhaust fans every time accordingly, because the temperature sensor will be taking the temperature from the environment and it will be maintaining the temperature using exhaust fans. So that is the answer. Are there more variables that you can think of? मैंने कहा ना हमने सिर्फ बुक में स्टिक नहीं रहना, मैं आपके साथ नोट शेयर करूंगा, उसमें देयर आर डिफरेंट ट्रैफिक कंट्रोल सिस्टम में एग्जांपल दी हुई है. ओके राइट. इन फैक्ट व्हाट यू कैन डू इज, देखो बेटा, इफ यू कम